When I was in junior high school, my parents bought a piece of property outside Rochester, Indiana, on the Tippecanoe River. And we began going there throughout the summer to build a cottage, to build a cabin. Actually, it wasn't a cabin, it was more like a house. 2 bedrooms, living room, kitchen. It was a pretty nice sized shack, as my dad never did anything small. But I really understood the gospel, I think, for one of the first times as we were going there. Every time we would go to the cottage, we would pass some farmland area off of the main highway as we're going through all the back roads, snaking around to get to the river, and we would see this house. It was a finished basement, and that's it. It was just a little bit above the ground. It was just this flat floor, tar papered, all finished. The people were living in the basement of this house that someday would exist. There were TV antennas sticking up out of the floors as they were watching their TV and everything down in their basement, which for them was their only home at the time. And every time we passed it, all of us just laughed. Just laughed and laughed and laughed, because we just couldn't imagine how somebody could start something like that and never finished it. This went on for years, and it was always just that basement with the tar paper on the top. No first floor, no second floor, just the basement. I always wondered what the basement looked like inside, and we always laughed, as I said. Jesus in the gospel was saying the same thing. You're not going to build a home unless you can actually construct it, because otherwise you're going to be the ridicule of the town. You're not going to go to war with a certain number of people unless you have calculated that you have enough to win, because otherwise you're going to get destroyed. You have to make the proper calculations in order to be successful. And Jesus was telling us that in order to be successful, the biggest calculation, the biggest measure was to give God everything. He started that gospel passage today by saying, unless you could hate your own life, unless you could set aside anything that keeps you from me, you are not worthy of following me. Now that sounds more than a bit radical, and yet it is so necessary. Because if we let anything in, it could easily distract us from our ultimate goal. There are too many distractions in this world. The world constantly bombards us with distraction upon temptation, upon distraction, upon temptation. We are reminded in the readings of our own human nature and how frail they are. And if we don't do everything that we can to set those distractions aside, to set those temptations aside, we're going to lose sight of the Lord. As I said, it sounds a bit extreme, but it's the only way to survive spiritually. Make sure that you do everything that you can to set aside anything or anyone that keeps you from the Lord. Let's profess our faith.